Super excited today. For those who've listened for a long time, it's a big deal for me to get people that are involved in every piece of the boutique Blu-ray industry. And Scott Saslow, who's a graphics designer and layout artist and does many things in the industry, was happy to come by, and I'm so lucky he said yes. So, Scott, thank you for joining today.
Thank you. Great to be here. This'll be fun.
Absolutely, it will, man. That's great. I know there's a lot to talk about, but for anybody that doesn't know, there is a very exciting release for Arrow that you just worked on that involved a lot of martial arts and kicking. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk at all about the Bruce Lee set right out of the gate. I mean, just to give people a sense of kind of the work you do, I thought it might be cool to start there and just, we can kind of branch off from there. But what did you do for the Bruce Lee set? How did you get involved in that project? And, how's like just, yeah.
I was I was asked. At this
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
point, I've been doing work for Arrow, some artwork, mostly layouts and booklet design. God, I think my first thing was for them, the first film noir set they did. I think that was 2017, so it's
That's
been a while
awesome.
now.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to pull up uh, their email because their PA, basically he'll email me, Scott, we're wondering if you'd be interested in working on such and such. And, my answer is 99% of the time, yes. I think I'm just pulling up the email now. I think in the case of the Bruce Lee set, uh, they just brought me in to do some photo retouching for some of the extras. And then I asked, at some point I asked, oh, if no one else has gotten the job, I'd love to work on the whole set and the booklet and everything. And, they said, we'll see. And then finally I got an email saying, you're still interested. And, it was going to be 3 boxes, 2 completely different sets of artwork,
Yeah.
one by Tony Stella, the other by Tom Ralston. And, they send the grids because you know, the releases most of the time it's the same. The wrap, the disc, the O card, if there is one, they're
Yeah.
all the same grids. But this one, every now and then, there's something new. So the box, which had 3 different components: the top, the bottom, and the body of
Yeah.
it. Um, so those each have their own unique grids, and then the artwork has to fit into that. I get the artwork. If I'm lucky, it fits, and I think some of the artwork fit better than others, but and Tony and Tom, I mean, I can't do what they do, um, but I sort of have to put it all together
Yeah.
and make sure everything's aligned. I know one of the Bruce Lee sets, the top and the rest of the body, there's like a millimeter tolerance. So, when I saw some people posting photos and it was just slightly off, it's like, I'll have to do better on the next one. Although it's an inexact process, unfortunately. But so there's the box and have to make sure that's all laid out. And then the J cards, although what were they called on that one? The piece of paper that's usually has a little
Yeah.
key that you peel off with all the specs and the logos and the barcode. Have to type all of that, make sure that's all properly formatted and all the information is accurate. And
Was it an O card for that one?
no, that one, it was digipacks within the box.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
something like I did Mallrats, where that's an O card.
I
And
got you. I
it's
got you.
when I did the first Mallrats Blu-ray a few years ago, I had almost no time to really work. I didn't have as much time as I would have liked, and a couple of nasty typos crept through. They were fixed for the reissue and they were fixed for the 4K.
Okay.
So I live in fear of just typos or inaccurate info, the wrong running time, or, something's copied from this project and it's not accurate or something. But so the box, the digipacks, each of which had their own unique artwork and then titles, and then having to touch up the original posters, which went on the inside of the digipacks, because most posters aren't formatted for modern day home video.
Right, right, right.
So either something has to be cropped off or painted and expanded, or on those posters, the text is often at the edge, so I have to cut the text and then paint that in, and so I can move the text over a little bit. Logos, sometimes I have to recreate them. Actually, just did that today for a release I'm working on. Um, Not a kung fu flick, but I just got a production company logo today that was too low res, and thankfully it was just text, and I recognized the font, so I was able to recreate the logo so I could have a scalable,
Jeez.
vectorized version of it. The mainstream studios, those I have all their logos, so that's no problem. But every now and then I have to recreate one from scratch. And then the booklet, 200 pages, which I remember when I got my first 200-page book, that was for the game. Uh,
Uh-huh.
that was
Uh-huh.
right around the start of COVID, I remember too. It was like, oh my God, 200 pages. But now I've done three. That one, the movie's been set, and then Bruce Lee. It's like nothing. Um, and then the photos, most of which require touching up to one degree or another. And then, and actually do spend a lot of time figuring out what fonts to use, um, for the header text and the body copy. Uh, for any design nerds who might be listening, Coromant Garamond, uh, and ITC Officina Sans are sort of my favorite body copy fonts. We got really nerdy really quick here. And
No, it's fantastic. I love it.
but the uh, and then for the booklet and the disc art, because it was two different artists, certain things sort of had to be design agnostic. So, for instance, I couldn't use Tony Stella's art on the discs if they would be packaged with the set that had Tom Ralston's art in it. So I just
Uh,
sort of vague generic textures. Although I think I used the colors from his as an influence on the discs. So the subtle color tints that are there came from Tony, as did the title treatments. And then the booklet, the what else do we do? What else do we do? The postcards, and then the actual posters themselves. Uh, I'm just
well,
pulling it up now on my website.
no, it's okay. I'm exhausted just hearing this. So I think this is a fantastic warning for anybody that wants your job or to do what you do. Uh, Scott, that's an insane amount of work that goes into that release. Um,
And I'm just one of many. I mean, I'm not the only. There's a lot of insane work, not design wise, but yeah, it has to be. I want to make every release sort of look of a piece, so to speak, and I don't want any one component to, whether it's the disc or booklet cover or something. I don't want any one component to sort of jump out like this one doesn't belong.
yeah,
This
yeah.
one doesn't go with the other pieces. So whether it's a font or a color, uh, everything comes from somewhere, even yeah.
No, man, I'm just, it's one of the, I mean, what you just went through in that story of Bruce Lee, there's like 500 questions that have come out of that for me. I think what I'd like to do is, before we get into that, use that as a fascinating kind of teaser, because I'm sure anybody listening has a ton of questions as well. Let's go back a little bit. So you, this is a massive project that you've done recently, one of many big, very large, involved projects that you've been engaged with. So it's probably fair to say you're at a point in your career where you're pretty well known, and you get projects like this, and you're humming along, but I'm sure it wasn't always that way. So I'd be interested, Scott, just in going back a little bit. So I know from talking to you beforehand, you went to film school, but even right before that, like, can you just go through like when did you kind of get interested in film in general, and when did you know you wanted to kind of make this something more than just a hobby, and just kind of where does Scott Saslow art come from?
um it's funny. It's like I consider myself more of a craftsman than anything. um but I've been into movies and movie making since I was a kid.
Okay.
God, I remember buying the making of the Super Mario Brothers movie at the school book fair. That would have been, I guess, 1993.
Yeah.
Uh, and the making of Home Alone 2, and watching the HBO First Looks and Movie Magic on the Discovery Channel. I think those clips are on YouTube now, and it's just always been interesting to me. And the one thing of all the crap I kept from when I was younger, the one thing, it's not crap, but the one thing I guess I got rid of at some point, I can't believe it. I can't find it. I sent a fan letter to Industrial Light and Magic um, when I guess I was in sixth or seventh grade, and they replied. I'm sure it was a form letter. And for some reason, I can't find that letter because for a while I wanted to go into effects. I wanted to,
Okay.
an ILM. I wanted to work there.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
as things got more and more computerized, I kind of lost a little interest in it because I used to read Cinefex, and reading them, talking about blowing up miniatures and things like that, but they don't
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
now. And then I went to film school, or rather, so I went to Florida State University. They were actually profiled on an episode of Movie Magic, and I had to stay in the state. And the competition was fierce. I think they only took 30 students a year, 15 freshmen and 15 transfers. I didn't get in as a freshman, but I went, hung around the film school. I found it rather cliquey. I guess I worked as a PA on one short film where I had to block traffic all day. And needless to say, I did not get into the film school. Um, I finished my associate degree, 2-year degree at Palm Beach Community College, now State College. And then I went to a film school called Full Sail uh, in Orlando, which is better known now than it was then. I think Darren Bousman, who did some of the Saw sequels, went
Oh,
there,
yeah.
and
Cool.
Gary Rizzo, Oscar-winning sound designer at Skywalker, he went there. And even though I'm not a filmmaker now, I did meet some of my closest friends there. But that was, I mean, it was the best of times and the worst of times. And in retrospect, I was so hell-bent on directing something, I sort of missed the forest for the trees. And if I had focused on something more specific, editing or cinematography or whatever, I could be doing that
Oh, okay.
now. And I often, and when we graduated, um, social media wasn't quite a thing yet. I think Facebook and MySpace had only just started when we graduated. And, you have all these guys on YouTube now doing movie reviews and
Right.
Red Letter Media and those guys. And, I ask my friends, like, you think we missed the boat? Like, we could have put ones in had we known. Uh,
Sure.
the we did there were three production classes, one on digital, which I'm sure was super primitive, would be super primitive now. And
Yeah.
then we shot on actual film. We did 4 films on 16 millimeter, the class split into 4 groups, and then 3 on 35.
Oh, wow.
16 millimeter film I worked on, I was sort of made production designer. And even though we couldn't go on location, the script called for a passenger plane interior. The lead character was a flight attendant. And this is more producing than production design. I actually found a company willing to give us thousands of dollars worth of old airplane parts, and the team actually constructed an aircraft interior, half of one on the stage. We had actual windows and overhead
Oh,
bins,
shit. That's
a
wild.
meal cart, and a galley wall, like that half wall section.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Uh, and then for 35, a friend and I, we co-wrote a script that was made into one of the 35 millimeter films. And then they were big on multiple directors. So I co-wrote one film and then co-directed another. And that one was just fraught with problems from the beginning, which I'll spare you the details. But, and then a year or so after that, I kind of realized filmmaking wasn't quite the dream I thought it was. And I look
Okay.
back, it's like, I don't have the temperament, you
Okay.
know, and I've been on sets. I've worked as a PA, worked as an extra. I'm actually SAG eligible. And, it's exciting. And there is a fun, let's put on a show aspect to it all that I love. But yeah, so I spent most of my 20s just a series of go nowhere temp jobs. And then I'm living at my aunt and uncle's in Jersey City, commuting into New York every day and just for office work. And I realize, damn, I'm going to be 30 soon. I can't be a temp forever. And
Yeah.
at the time, Full Sail, they didn't have a bachelor's program yet. So I only had 2 associate's degrees. So I went back to school. I moved in, excuse me, I moved in with my parents one last time. I went to Florida Atlantic University
Yep.
and uh, mainly for financial reasons, but I met a lot of good people there. And you still had to do your core classes, your prerequisites, and then pass a portfolio review, which thankfully I passed. I remember the highest mark in my portfolio was the written essay for a design portfolio, which I always found ironic. But the best thing, one of those design prereqs, one of my teachers asked me to step outside, so naturally I thought I was in trouble. And she actually asked me, "Have you done this before?"
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, I must be doing something right.
Yeah, that's great.
Ironically, before I went to Florida State, my mom actually took me to an open house at the Art Institute for graphic design. And I don't think the Art Institute even exists anymore. But that was my first instinct. So often your first
Uh,
instinct is the correct one, and
yeah, yeah.
I could have easily gone there and gotten my graphic design degree, by the time I was 20. Uh,
Hey man, I didn't get a full-time job at I'm 41 now, about to turn 42. Hey, nice. Are you an 82 birthday?
January 83.
83. Okay. All right,
Mhm.
man. Well, yeah, I'm turning 42 this year, but I didn't get a job that was steady until let's see, 2021. So what was I in 39? So there's no such thing as too late. I'm in a career I love now. I think we all find it at different times, right?
Mhm.
But oh, that's so cool. So again, a lot of questions in what you just said, but I think one of the things that jumps out to me, if you loved the set design and some of that work early on and the production design, were you naturally drawn to like the Mario Bavas of the world and like some the Michel Gondrys and like some of these folks that like were big into, practical kind of effects and design?
Not so much those guys, as great as they are. I mean, I still am. I got into Star Trek at a very early age. And as a kid, I really gravitated towards not just the spaceships and things like that and the effects, but the graphic design. And I remember, I mean, one of my heroes is Mike Okuda, who was a longtime graphic designer for all things Star Trek,
Oh,
as
okay.
recently as season three of Picard.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents got me a book. God, it must have been in '94, The Making of Star Trek Deep Space Nine by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. And I already had other making of books, but this one
Uh,
is still one of the best I've ever read. And there was a whole chapter just on design. And as a kid, a 10, 11-year-old, I couldn't believe like people get paid to do this.
right, right.
Really planted the seed. And then you had the Star Wars hype was back with the special editions and then the prequels and
Yep.
all the behind the scenes making of artwork, etc. So that it really all kind of happened around uh, then, I guess, middle school, but it wasn't specifically graphic design, again, except for track. But I wasn't looking at logos and stationery and things like that, let alone home video stuff.
Right.
But yeah, that really all planted the seed, getting into Trek and that aspect of it. Um, but then I went to so after I graduated FAU, I got a job at this small design agency back in Boca Raton, and at school. And by the way, this is something they can't really teach you. But my classmates, we'd talk to each other and ask, "Oh, do you want to go freelance or do you want to work for an agency?" And people would ask me, and I would tell them, "I need an agency. I can't freelance on my own. I don't know what the hell I'm doing." And after 6 months, I quit because I was miserable. I went back to my retail job that I had had during school to help pay for it. I worked at the Container Store.
Okay.
It was brand new. I was one of the first employees they hired, and I got to work in the stock room away from customers, which was nice. And
Uh-huh.
so after that design job, I went back to the store, and then I read about a guy. I still not sure how to pronounce the last name, if it's Majaric or Majoric, Australian designer doing one poster a day. I think he still has the handle on Instagram, Craft and Graft.
Okay.
One minimalist movie poster a day for a year. And I thought, I think I could do that too. So I started and I did 365 posters in 365 days. I'm not the only one who's done that. I see plenty of people doing that online, and more power to them. It's great. But that helped open a few doors for me. And then I moved back to LA. I lived there for a year and a half after film school, moved back because I always regretted leaving, got an internship at BLT, which is one of the big movie entertainment ad agencies.
Okay.
Uh, And that was a 3 month paid internship. So that ended in January of 2017. And I guess technically I've been freelancing ever since.
Wow.
Sometime, I guess a few months later, because every so often I would email Arrow and Criterion and all the others, and my email just landed in the inbox of the right person at Arrow. They were prepping their film noir set, the first one, and I guess they had a designer who didn't work out, and they liked some of the daily posters I had done, and they asked me if I could do sort of a Saul Bass type thing, and he's one of the greats, so
Of course.
how do I do that? But somehow I managed, and I mean, the fact that they gave me a 4 film box set to do for my first project for them. I didn't do the booklet or the layouts. I've since done that for Film Noirs 2 and 3. But that was just still one of the proudest moments of my career thus far.
And that was
And,
back in 2017.
yeah. And
Hell
then,
yeah, man.
but there was still a lot of, I've pretty much been working nonstop at this since the start of 2020. Ironically, almost since the start of COVID.
Okay.
I was working that whole time. I'm really one of the lucky ones, and I'm blessed. But living in LA, I also did background work, working as an extra on TV. It's an interesting way to make money. So, when I didn't have design work, I had the background work, sometimes both at the same time, sometimes neither at the same time. Uh, but, managed to keep busy, and I don't take any of it for granted, that's for sure. And there's so many labels, my God. It's like just when I thought like, I've gotten somewhere. It's like, oh, but now there's half a dozen new companies,
Oh,
now I
totally.
want to.
Well, it's funny because we just spoke with Umbrella Entertainment in Australia just a couple of weeks back, and they have 12 full-time people. So as far as these boutique label goes, that's the bigger side as staff. They do other things. They do film distribution
Yeah,
and stuff theatrically, but they still have a network of vendors and people that are helping them out. Like it's just like there's just so much work that goes into it. So so you get the job with Arrow and you're like, hell yeah, like this is like here's some paid work. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing the amount, and you certainly don't have to, but generally speaking, was it an amount that you were like, in your head, you were like, okay, I can make a living if I can get this a lot? Or is it an amount that you're like, damn, okay, I'm gonna need a part-time job? How
I
do those,
won't. I won't get specific, but based on my, I have to submit them. But based on my taxes this past year, I do all right.
okay,
I
awesome.
do okay. Some labels pay more than others. I remember the first design job I got right out of school, not the full-time thing that I quit, but I responded to this agency in Miami, and they brought me in to just do like a one-time thing, some illustration work. And I remember when they told me, it's like, oh, and this will pay $1,000. And my first thought was like, oh, is that between us? And they're like, no, that's ours. That's for you.
You're like $1,000.
I'll take it. Okay.
That's awesome. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad it's you're able to make a living on it. Are you able to say which boutique label pays the best, or is that bad form?
I don't want to go there.
All right, then I won't ask the question. Okay, so you get with Arrow and you put this out, and then I'm sure you're still reaching out to people at this point, though, right? Like you're still kind of sending these emails out at this point.
Yeah. And it's been so long now since, like, every time there's a stoppage in the work and I think like, oh, I need to send some emails, then I get an email and, oh, new
Yeah,
job. So,
yeah.
but I remember at some point, it wasn't all back to back to back. I did the film noir set, and then I did a couple others for Arrow. This is back when they had the Arrow Academy line. Um, but at some point, one of the guys at Kino Lorber reached out to me
Oh, cool.
about working on something because I guess they have a couple of teams, and I've worked on the Kino Lorber titles I've done. It's more on the esoteric side. I'm not working on the big studio licensed titles that they do, like the major ones. But they reached out to me. A few other smaller labels have reached out to me, but it's like work leads to more work. It's a cliche, but it's often true. And as much as I loathe social media, it has been an important part of, like, I wouldn't have the career I have without it.
Yeah.
And especially doing the poster project. And I told this to I went back to FAU to speak to the design students who were graduating, and I told them, no matter what you're into, whether it's designing your own fonts or album covers or movie posters or whatever, just share your work. You never know who's going to see it, and you will find your community, and just like I found
That's cool.
mine.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a YouTuber, which I mean, I'm sure you know him. Um, Sorry, I have kids, so I don't know how much people know things about kid stuff without having kids. But his name is Mr. Beast, and he's I think I can't remember the amount of money he makes on YouTube now, but his net worth is about $600 million, and it's all from YouTube. And he's done like
Really?
yeah, and he's
Okay.
done like like he does crazy things, like he'll give away $1 million or whatever. Like he's big now, so he can do like crazy things. But he did a talk, an interview one time, and he had an interesting perspective that I think aligns really well with what you just said. So I'm only saying this to say it's interesting. Now I've heard it twice in the last week. What he said was, I'll talk to anybody. Like, come talk to me. I don't care how big I get. Like, I'll help you. But don't come to me until you made 100 videos because you don't, when you make 100 YouTube videos, your mind is different. You just have go through and you see the changes and you understand it better. And that's very similar to what you're saying, right? You're like you said, I made 365 posters, and you probably just had more skill at the end of that, right? I mean, just navigating the programs, and you probably got faster and all this stuff as well.
That faster, definitely. And, with the daily posters, all told, I'd say 1/6 of them are good, which means 5/6 of them are not good. But you know what? That's still about 60 good posters that I still stand by. A lot of them I have since redone. Some of them make me cringe. Like, oh, you could tell I had nothing to do, and it was 11:55 p.m. and I needed one before before, before it changed to the next day. Um, but no, people. I mean, again, I don't claim to be an expert or a guru, but every now and then someone will reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to give advice because it's what I would have hoped, like when I was a student and the questions I had. So, if anyone asks me how to get into this or how did I do such and such, it's like, it's not spread the knowledge. It's not, there are no secrets here.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I'm just impressed with your work ethic, and I think that's a good thing for people to hear. Like at the end of the day, like you had work, and people saw that work, and then asked you to come in, right? It would have been hard to do that without a portfolio behind you, right?
Well, yeah, and I remember well, two things. One, I did tell the students sooner or later you will have enough professional work in your portfolio where you don't have to rely on your student work anymore. Because when you're graduating, unless you have some side job doing graphic design while you're a student, you're only
Yeah,
going to have your student work. And
yeah.
then the other thing was when I interviewed at BLT, the guy who interviewed me, who was my boss, I remember him saying, none of my student work, like my student stuff didn't get me through the door. It was the daily poster project that got me through the door. If I hadn't done that, then that would have been it. But
Fascinating.
so that helped.
Fascinating. So, that's great advice. So you work with Arrow, you got another project. Now you're working with Kino. This takes us to, I'm assuming 2018. Maybe we're getting into 2019 now. You're getting in some work, and you said you really hit the ground running in 2020.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
is that right? The timeline is kind of right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when did you go from, helping with simple layout or maybe, some simple graphic design work to like doing everything, like piecing it all together and like doing booklets and like really kind of, what was your first project in that was very involved like that?
Let's see. I've got my website up in the other window. Well, okay, so the first, God, I haven't looked at a lot of this stuff in a while. And of course, the internet decided to slow down a little bit. Oh, here we go. So the first few things I did for Arrow, it was just artwork. It was four film noir classics, um, three films by, and I'm probably going to screw up the name, Gia Zanke.
Oh yeah.
Again, just artwork, very Criterion style. Uh,
Hmm.
they're Godard and Goran set, and then
Hmm.
the four films by Sasha Guitry. Um,
Yeah.
and then there were a couple others, smaller ones. And then within the span of a couple months at the start of 2020, I think Black Rainbow was the first one where I actually did the layout in the booklet. And that was a lot of trial by fire. I think they sent me in some existing templates, and I sort of had to go back and kind of reverse engineer all of it
Okay.
to figure it out. And then did the booklet for that one. Let's see. Oh, Nathaniel Marsh did the artwork for that. And then I got the game. Corey Brickley did the artwork for that. And I don't think they've done a release in that particular packaging since. It's this oversized box, a
Hmm.
page book, and then the book, the inside flap has a pocket where the disc goes. And I remember I was actually on set doing background work. I forget what show, if it was NCIS or SWAT, one of those, where
Okay.
I got the email saying, "Do you want to work on the game? Do you think you could do a 200-page book?" And at the time, it's like, "Oh my God!" But you know what? No problem. And that was right around the start of COVID. I remember there was a there's a chapter for anyone who owns it. There's a chapter in the game book on the film cinematographer Harris Savitis, who is
Okay.
sadly with us. And he was featured in this book that's long out of print called Cinematography, where that included some of his camera and lighting sketches.
Okay.
And I remember the folks at Arrow said, "Oh, because of COVID, the BFI library is shut down. We can't get these sketches." And in LA, the Academy Library and that was all shut down. Um, so I think that if they said worst comes to worst, we'll just buy it. We'll buy the book and scan the images. But I just found them online. Someone had put them on
Okay.
Twitter, on some Fincher fan account. So yeah, that's so found that. Um, I was complimented on my detective work, and
Uh-huh. I'm sure.
that was all. And sometimes it's a trick. I remember the art, just making the art fit the template. Sometimes it is like getting a round peg in a square hole sometimes, but you make it work. And after the game, I did Life is a Long Quiet River, Hiroshima, uh,
Oh, wow.
Go to the Hero, and Little Nothings all together. And again, pretty minimalist Criterion style. Again, this is when they still had the Academy line.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Warning from Space with artwork by Matt Griffin, which still has one of the geekiest essays I've ever had the privilege of laying out. There's an essay in that booklet all about the dubbing process and the actors who dub
Oh,
international
cool.
films for American release. That's the kind of thing I love with these releases.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then the Mallrats, which being a Kevin Smith fan, perfect. But I think I had 2 days. I only had a few days to do most of the work because it was being announced
Wow.
the same week. And in the
Oh, wow.
announcements, it's like you kind of need all the packaging. But that was fun to work on. And that was a fun 4K to revisit where the mall map was my idea.
Oh, nice, nice.
Talk about that in a bit. But that
I
was
need
an under
to. I need to. I can't. I need to go check it out because there was a whole debate in Mallrats about if the cookie stand was a part of the food court, right? Did
or an autonomous unit for mid mall snacking. I suggested a mall map, and then they said, "You know what? Let's do it." So I used the existing Eden Prairie Mall map as a base. I did trace it and then made some modifications. I did reach out to the film's production designer, who eventually got back to me after most of the work had been finished,
Oh,
but they
done.
liked what I had come up with. And obviously, they only dressed the stores that you see in the movie. So it was a combination of watching the movie over and over, figuring out what stores relate physically to other stores. So if they're on the first floor looking up, and then they're at the next store. So obviously, one store
Oh
has to
my
be side on
gosh.
the first floor, the next store has to be on the other side on the second floor. Uh, you know, Also, I came up with some stores of my own. I'm particularly proud of instead of Build a Bear, Weld a Walrus, which is also a Tusk reference. I named a
Nice.
couple stores after friends. I named a deli in the food court after my parents, because you only see one side of the food court. And I
Right.
did reach out to the mall to see if they could provide me with a map circa 1995 or 94, 95, but they didn't. But the lady was very nice. And then what I even picked up the Mallrats movie magazine that was published, just for any background info. And there were some store listings in there that you don't see in the movie, but they're just sort of included on a smaller map. And then all the little pictograms, bathrooms, wheelchair access, and elevators and
Jeez.
escalators. And then on the
Jeez.
back, and also making sure the stores were period appropriate.
Hmm.
Stores that would have existed in the mid 90s that may not exist now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm big on research. Like some actual thought goes into this. And then for the back, um, the producer's idea was, oh, we should maybe have some coupons or ads for local businesses. So there's one for the Quick Stop, there's one for the funeral home in Clerks where they
Nice.
have a casket over. There's one for uh, the local public access station, which is airing Bowling for Dollars, which I understand Kevin Smith's dad used to watch when he was a kid.
Okay.
And there's an ad for the pet store, Gerbils, Gerbils, Gerbils. They're doing a cat adoption event, so I got my friend's cat uh, in there, Astro the cutest on Instagram, and no, that was a blast. And unfortunately, it coincided with Kevin announcing that he was taking a break from social media. I was hoping he would do an unboxing video like he did for the Blu-ray the first time around.
Oh,
Just one more.
you're like, come on, damn it.
I'd love to know what he thought of the map. And I made sure to put my name on it on the bottom, designed by,
I'm
just
sure
in
he
case.
knows. I'm sure he's seen it. He's a fanboy at heart. I'm sure he saw it.
So Arrow, yeah. And then after that, what else did I do? El Duce tapes, layout and booklet for that with John Pearson's art, Verses with Chris Malbon's art, Burst City with Chris Malbon's art, the Shohei Emma Morissette with
Yeah.
Tony's art, Giants and Toys with Tony's art, Switchblade Sisters, Death Has Blue Eyes, Twins of Evil and Graham Humphreys. Oh, one of my favorite titles was working on Cronenberg's Crash with Giles Rank's artwork
It's a
because
really cool release.
when I was a student for our senior exhibition, I actually came up with my own Blu-ray label and designed two physical media releases. One was the Parallax View, which Criterion has since done,
Uh-huh.
and the other was Cronenberg's Crash. I came up with extras. I found an essay. I did a booklet.
No
The disc
way.
art where it's Deborah Kara Unger with that sort of caution logo in the center.
Uh-huh.
I did on my student project. I just brought that over to the Arrow release.
That's amazing. So even in school, you knew you wanted to kind of get into this world, though. I mean,
It all really happened towards the last semester. I think that's when I discovered Poster Spy
okay.
website or around there, and that's when Sam Smith and Brandon Schaefer started doing the Poster Boys podcast. Like all this stuff sort of happened at once because when I went back to school and started graphic design, I didn't have any idea of doing this. In retrospect, it sounds so obvious. I mean, and the two things I'm into, film and graphic design, it's like, why not combine the two? And that kind of became
Yeah.
the goal. And I was really one of the only students that had any kind of interest in doing something in pop culture. I think another girl did a movie poster. One girl for one of her projects did a sci-fi cookbook, which is pretty
Oh,
cool.
okay. That is cool.
Recipes from Star Trek, Star Wars, I think Babylon 5, Doctor Who, etc.
Uh,
Uh, but yeah, so I did two physical media releases. I called my label Heliotrope Films, and I'm actually pretty proud of what I did. Basic, the specs, the logos, everything on the back, like you see on any physical media release. I just did it my way.
so we have a future here. I think you're calling your shot, right? 1 year there's going to be a Heliotrope Films coming out with some releases,
I
but
doubt
uh,
that.
no, but I think I'm learning through these conversations as well, right? There's a lot that I don't know, and one of the things I'm hearing and what you're saying, which I think is super fascinating, is that there's some beautiful work that goes into designing artwork for something,
Mhm.
and then you go and there's a different sort of creative skill in writing essays and writing the content for the books that are put together. And there's maybe somebody who's kind of helping you think through the overall packaging design and layout and those things. So the role of the role where you fit is that the as I'm going to put words in your mouth. I want to see if tell me
Okay.
if they're right. As DVD and Blu-ray and now 4K are moving into this like collector's market, right? There's a lot of conversation about how it's booming, and I think that's certainly true, although slightly misguided to say it like that. I mean, not everybody has a Blu-ray 4K player, but for the people that do, I think it's booming. So it's kind of anyways. But but people want something beautiful to put on their shelves and display and buy and limited and slipcover and like there's all this stuff that they want now, right? So as the industry changes, there's a very important role to make sure that the artwork that's coming in, the design, the vision for the actual packaging, the creativity that's coming in from the writing, whatever, all these different pieces that are coming together are brought together, and then there's this extremely critical step of combining it in a way that makes it feel complete and beautiful and something that people want to own, right? Because like if the artwork's off, then it's
Mhm.
going to look weird, or like if the if there's a bunch of typos and stuff in the like in the essays and people are going to say it's unprofessional, like there's all this kind of stuff that you have to think through once it all comes in, and it kind of rests on your shoulders to then say, okay, how does this all come together and look like people are going to expect it to look? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As I said, every release I try to make, and there are plenty of other people who do this too, but I try to make it like one cohesive product, whether that's, the choice of colors, the choice of fonts. Um, as I said, the font is usually, just today, the one Arrow title I just got to work on today. The layout and design, the artist used a font for, well, the title, it's a couple of words, and one of the words, the font is this font called Albertus. And if you don't know it, you've seen it because that's the font, I believe, in all the John Carpenter's films.
Okay.
That's that font. So it's like, well, okay, I'll use that font for the booklet, for the all the headers, and for on the back where it lists special edition contents, and same with the colors, and just kind of repeating those throughout the whole product. And then okay, and then what font do you use for the essay itself? Because I mean, you probably have two. Like there's some booklets now and then you get one that's hard to read.
Mm-hmm.
It's also why I rarely do white text on a black background, and I really try to do dark text on a light one because it's easier to read.
Mm-hmm.
A serif instead of a sans serif because those are easier to read. But that's the kind of crazy detail that comes with this. But I love it.
No, it's amazing, but you have to love it, right? Because it would drive you crazy otherwise. Like that's like to take the vision of an artist and then turn it into something which is I like that you called yourself a craftsman early on. I get it now. You're taking these disparate pieces of beautiful things and making it like a whole beautiful thing. Um,
Like to think so.
no, absolutely. Like, I mean, one of the other things I wanted to call out, you mentioned Saul Bass. I was going to ask you about this because what did you do for that Carlotta Films release of Phase 4? Because that looks like that's a beautiful release.
Well, that one, uh, and thank you very much, by the way. I would have loved to have done the American release that just came out too for Vinegar Syndrome, but I think Adam Maida did that, and he's great. But that one I did a handful of rough comps. I even went back and found some unused poster concepts that he did, or not that Saul Bass did, but that were done for the film, and recreated some of those, and they went with the one they went with. Let me see.
I don't mean to start a conflict, and you don't have to comment on this. I'm just giving feedback.
Yeah.
What I love about your release for Carlotta was it feels like a Saul Bass film. Like as I look and hold it, I believe that it's like a Saul Bass thing, right? And I was surprised with the Vinegar Syndrome art. I'm not trying to be critical. I've been a 4-year subscriber to Vinegar Syndrome. I love them. But I was surprised that as I was looking at it, I didn't feel like it was a Saul Bass thing. It felt like more genre than I think something that he would have created. Anyways.
Right. Um, it's interesting. I'm looking back for the since I save all my emails, I'm going back to those emails. Okay, 10 dated October 17th, 2019,
Okay.
or just before the world changed.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm just looking at it now. If there's any dead air, you can cut it later.
No, it's okay. Where is
Uh,
Carlotta based? Are they a UK company?
they're in France.
France. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
actually, yeah, they specifically. I guess somehow I split the difference because I'm looking at their email now from a week later. Also, the design should not be inspired by Saul Bass's style. And yet I managed to sort of get there anyway. But there are other designers from his time that did maybe not work that was as instantly iconic as his, but that kind of worked in a similar vibe. There's a great design book that I look at before I work on certain projects by Stephen Heller. It's called The Moderns. It's
Okay.
this hardcover, this coffee table book. And I look through that for inspiration. And you look at, you see Saul Bass's work, but then it's like, oh, but if you like Saul Bass, then you will also like so and so.
Yeah.
As I said before, a lot of my stuff's in storage right now, so I can't reach over to my shelf and get it.
Same.
Uh, but yeah, because I don't have my hard drives hooked up right now, but yeah, I think I did 8 or 10 concepts. I would have been happy if they had gone with any of them. But yeah, they went with the one that was the most Bass-esque
That's interesting. Yeah,
product at
no,
the end of the
that's
day.
cool. Well, it's a beautiful release. Uh, um,
And again, I love Adam Maida's stuff, and he does a lot of work for Criterion, like a lot of titles. Actually, I would have loved to design for Criterion. I think he did Parallax View. I think he did the fail-safe release, like political thrillers, and I love that, and I love his
yeah,
style.
that's cool. No, and again, it's a cool looking release. Like
Yeah.
you get the theme of the movie well from it. It does a good job representing the movie. I was just selfishly, I wanted something that, anyways, personality differences.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the biggest question I have for somebody in your shoes, because you're opposite the way that my mind, your mind is the opposite the way that my mind is. I would be, I'm in sales, so like details are sometimes my enemy.
Mhm.
Not to sound stereotypical, but it's kind of, there's some truth in stereotypes. But the thing that blows me away about what you do is that sometimes or often you don't have one project going on at a time, but you'll have multiple projects. So how in the hell do you like go to this level of depth on not only one thing, but like two or three things at the same time that all have a deadline? Like, is that like a skill that you learned over the years? Do you have to be born that way?
It's pretty much a skill that,
Okay.
but it's not something I'm really conscious of, and there's so many things they can't teach you. One of them is really
Right.
time management. But for instance, at this point, I've been doing this long enough to know roughly how long something will take. And if I have a full day with nothing else going on, if Arrow gives me a title, not something like the Bruce Lee set, but like a single film, you know, wrap front and back, someone else's artwork, 20-page booklet, and an O card, and none of the photos are in major need of restoration, and the art and everything fits. Like I could knock that out in a day, less than a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, the title they gave me this morning, it's not saying what the title is, but it's US and UK, Blu-ray and 4K. And except for the booklet, I got it all done already.
Oh
They gave it
shit.
to me this morning, and like if we stop this right now, I could have the booklet done before I go to bed and have a first pass for them in the morning. But I also have to
That's
work on the packaging shots for another title that I'm working on for them. And it's funny, you talk about detail, the packaging shots when Arrow and the other companies, when they do their monthly announcements, someone has to make those product shots.
mhm.
And in the case of something like the Empire film set, where you have US and UK releases, um, just Blu-ray, but 5 films, each
Mhm.
one has artwork front and back. That was something like 100 packaging shots because you
Wow.
have the 2D shot, the 3D shot, the JPEG, the transparent PNG, and then you have it all
Jeez.
again for front and back, and then you have it all again US and UK. So
Wait,
like,
but you're
yeah,
not taking an actual picture, are you? It's all digital, right?
yeah, it's all mock-ups. Although I would love to get to the point where I'm doing photorealistic ones. There's a designer who designs a lot of releases for La La Land Records,
Okay.
Jim Titus, ridiculously talented. And when he does product shots for like film score albums that he works on, they're photo real.
Mm.
and it's like I'm not there yet. Plus, every company sort of has their own house style for this sort of thing.
True,
But
true,
yeah,
true.
it's easy work. It just takes a lot of time, with the mock-ups and smart objects and Photoshop and making sure they all look good because that will be the first time people find out about these releases. So, you want to put your best foot forward.
So that okay, I wasn't anticipating this question, but this is something that just came up with what you said. So you have your general person. You said the PA emails you and says, "What about this?" And you say,
Mhm.
"Sure." How many people do you typically engage with throughout Arrow over the course of a project? Like, are you sending those product shots to the marketing team and working with them? How many people do you touch on a typical project?
I mean, there have been some releases, again, with Arrow where I'm just dealing with the PA
Okay.
and that's it. And everything goes through him, which it might be harder. I mean, it's easier for me. It's probably harder for him.
Hmm.
Uh, but some projects, the Bruce Lee set, I was interacting with the PA. I was interacting with James, the producer. I think I had to send because I'm friends with a lot of these guys on social media. I think I had a question for Tony Stella that I needed answering about something with the artwork, and then I think there was something with Tom Ralston's artwork that I needed to figure out.
Okay.
So that one, like I interacted with lots of people, but the QC people, the audio, like I don't have any interaction with those people. It's always the PA, often the producer. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But in the case of Arrow and Kino, I mean, I have it down to a science
Yeah, that's
now. But
that's
then the trick is also not making it all like assembly line, cookie cutter. There's only so much I can do within the established style, but I don't just want to do the same thing every time either. It's kind of a thin line to walk.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. That's an interesting comment though. I'm just processing that. So you get where would maybe this is again, this is just me learning here. Where would the creativity come in for you? Do you essentially say like, here's my idea for what the whole package could look like? And then they just say yes or no or tweak it like that. Like, is that where the creativity comes in?
Well, the art, that's why I call myself more of a craftsman. If someone else is doing the artwork, the
Right.
producers, I imagine, pretty much know what the release will look like because they see the artwork and that's what's going to be on the case or the
Yeah,
box or
yeah.
whatever. Um, Again, with me, it's often, arranging the photos and touching those up. And I know I was accused of going a little hot on the contrast at one point. I've toned it down a bit. Uh,
Okay.
you know, but choosing what photos and restoring those and where certain photos might go and choosing the backgrounds for the booklet. I don't just put in a what plain white background. I want to, choose a nice texture or something with a gradient or, and again, choosing which fonts, what colors. There have been a couple releases where I could do a little more, um, certain, things with spacing. Um, God, I'm trying to think, and they've been giving me a few more things to do, the map with Mallrats. With
Hmm.
Naked Lunch, they had me design a business card or a couple
Hmm.
of business cards. I think one you see in the film, I think Roy Scheider's character, you see his card in the film, and then they had me design a business card for Peter Weller. And then
Nice.
at one point, he goes on a ship on a voyage. I think you see the ticket for like 20 frames. So I had to design the ticket front and back,
Okay.
but I actually found an actual cruise ship ticket from around the same time, leaving from the same location. So I was able to plug in all that information. And then I think they
Jeez,
had me
that's
do
great.
some postcards for the back of the photo cards, do it like a postcard, greetings from Interzone. And
Oh
I think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
some of the handwriting is my own handwriting that I scanned, and
That's awesome.
little things like that. And then I'll get something like the film noir sets where I'll do well, those are unique because they're in a specific style, Saul Bass. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'll do multiple. I think for those, I think I did four comps for each title, and then another four or six or something. I like doing them even numbered for the box, and then they pick the ones they like, and we go from there. I think with Fillmore Volume 3, because time was of the essence, I mainly recycled concepts from some of the concepts were recycled from Volume 2, along
Okay.
with some
All
new
right.
ones. Um, and again, even that, choosing fonts, but choosing fonts that are period appropriate. Since
Right.
my pet peeves is whenever films are, and I talked about this with the Chasing Labels guys, you could tell we ran out of things to talk about by then. um, Studios reissue older titles, but they're packaged in like the colors or the title treatment. It's super modern.
Oh yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Like this doesn't fit. This doesn't work. So little first world pet peeve of mine. But yeah, I try to keep things period appropriate. There are titles I've worked on for Kino where I've traced existing title treatments because I couldn't find a good font. I'm pulling up a good example of one now. Yeah,
Did you?
yeah,
Oh no, no, you go first. Finish, please.
yeah. For Kino, their Reginald Denny collection, I went
Yeah,
to archive.com and found some vintage movie ads and this is movies from 100 years ago. So I just traced those out so I could have a scalable, uh, vectorized version of it. I wasn't just going to do Times New Roman, slap it on. I wanted to, give a sense of the time period.
that's amazing. Uh, yeah, I love that detail. I think what stands out to me the most about you, Scott, as I hear you talk, is like two main things. One is you mentioned this a couple of times, but I think it just shows even in your passion. The research and thoughtfulness that goes into like, kind of like measuring twice before you cut, right? I think that's really
Yeah. Measure
that's
twice,
really
cut once.
yeah, right. That's very admirable, especially given the tight timelines you've just talked about. To be able to do that and like get an idea and then also turn around something quickly is quite mind blowing. But then the second thing is the care and attention to detail, and it sounds like very instinctively you understand the things that are going to get like people that own this stuff. It's going to raise their ire, right? So you sort of just feels like kind of instinctively try to develop something that is perfect, which is awesome. And a lot of like one of the things I saw. I hope I got this right. Did you do the
Mhm.
Claude Chabrol stuff as well?
Uh,
One of the Claude
yeah,
Chabrol sets for Arrow?
yeah. Well, Tony did the artwork, and then I put that together. He did the
Yeah.
artwork and the titles, and I think he did, yeah, he did box artwork, and then separate artwork for the digipacks and separate artwork for the discs. So that's all him, or
As far
mostly all
as
him.
as far as the artwork goes, but I mean that whole set is I think it's construct like the format that Arrow likes to use with the side
Mhm.
slide in and the box, the thicker box and all that. To me, those are the best packages. I love those sets. They look beautiful, which makes sense, but also they just I don't know the everything about that is well done. And so that to me speaks to that level of like detail and stuff because Chabral was somebody who cared a lot about detail. Like some of his movies were a little slow, but like there's a lot happening if you kind of really pay attention, right?
Mhm.
Um, anyways, it felt that one felt like you nailed it. I mean, a lot of them we've talked about, but that's one that stood out to me as far as the design and the packaging and like the way that it was constructed and everything just felt really
Well,
right.
I'm not, but I'm also not involved. And we were talking before we started. I'd love to work my way up and help produce titles in the future, whether it's for Arrow or whoever. But I'm really not part of the discussions when it comes to the type of packaging, whether it's digipacks or
Mm-hmm,
regular plastic, you know, cases in a box,
mm-hmm.
like the Empire set, yeah, again, or digipacks or some kind of gatefold thing. Yeah, I'm not part of those. I mean, I have my own preferences when it comes to that. But I usually come in right after that, and I
Yeah.
imagine it's a time thing, it's a budget thing. But they're pretty good. They'll send me templates. Some templates from these vendors are better than others, and I set up my guides in Photoshop or InDesign or whatever, and go from there. I was just doing that today. I
That's
got my
awesome.
oak card template, so gotta have everything measured to the fraction of a millimeter. Even though there's always some tolerance with printing, so it might be shifted anyway. and go from there.
Well, if anybody's listening, make Scott a producer. It's time. But in the meantime, Scott, is there anything that I have not asked that you would want people to know about you?
Uh, let's. I mean, I'm sure once we're done, I'll think of 100 things. But I mean, nothing immediately comes to mind. I mean, I've been doing some work lately for Fun City, um, and I do stuff with Altered Innocence now and then. I did a lot with OCN for a while, when their art director was on maternity leave, but then she,
Mm,
came back. Um, but yeah, more labels. Criterion is still sort of the holy grail. I have a friend who's working on a title for them right now and has done several in the past. And yeah, I'd love to help produce titles in the future. I even sent Arrow a pitch deck once, and
okay.
whether anything happens from that, I don't know. I love coming up with names of the extras. Like the name, oh, a new interview with the director, like coming up with titles for those. I have a
Oh
good
yeah.
knack. Yeah. Um, for whatever that's worth. Uh, but yeah, there's more labels, more companies to work for. I just did a poster for Carlotta Films for a Stanley Kwan retrospective.
Oh wow.
And then I just did a poster for a Canadian documentary. That poster dropped today. The film is called Yinta, about an indigenous tribe and their battles with this oil company that wants to build a pipeline on their land.
Oh,
And
okay.
two titles for Arrow and one for Kino happening. And I think Fun City announced it already. I did the booklet and layout for their three French vigilante thriller set. Luke Insect did that artwork. Uh,
Awesome.
and yeah, nothing. Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any questions or anything, I mean, I'm at scottsaslow.com. Don't hesitate to reach out.
And I can vouch for the fact that you respond because that's why we're talking today. So, Scott, thank you so much. I think this has been a amazing conversation. I think for me, I'm starting to get a picture of, after doing this for about 2.5 years now, speaking to so many different parts of the process. I'm starting to get a picture of how it all comes together, but we not have a chance to have a graphic designer on and that does the kind of work that you do. And so I think this is a final piece for me, and a really important one. And thank you for the good work you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I hope to hear about you becoming a producer soon.
We'll see. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right, you too.